Thanks for watching. Today we're having a look at the Arrma Typhon 6S BLX, a brushless speed buggy. This thing is an 8 scale, goes 60 plus miles an hour. That is if you put the optional pinion that is included with this whole package, if you put that on there. So what is this? This is an 8 scale, it's a buggy, off-road buggy, 4-wheel drive. You can take it to the track, you can just take it to your bashing spot as well, just beat the shit out of it. But also I see a lot of people actually convert these into speed cars, and that's also I think what I want to do with mine. It's a lot lighter than, for example, HPI Vorsa. I'm not sure if you're familiar with those. Those back in the day that were like a HPI 6S version of like an 8 scale buggy. Really cool, durable buggy, but maybe a tiny bit on the heavy side for what it was. This is I think almost 10 years ago, so I'm getting really old. This thing is really made for all those 3 things that I just mentioned, and I think that it looks super cool. This is actually the 3rd generation. If I can give you a tip, if you walk into a store and you see the blue one, that's like the newest one, then just go for that one. That way you have basically all the newest stuff. I'm not going to go over all of the differences that they put in here compared to the previous 2 generations, just because I think that's boring as fuck. But I will try to address a few of them. Well, ton of features on the box. It's 4-wheel drive, says over here, ton of specs, more pictures on all sides, and I think a cool profile shot over there. Boxes are boring, so we're gonna throw this thing to the side. I didn't bother like waiting to actually pull it out of the box, or fake that I hadn't pulled it out of the box yet, and I struggle here with a bunch of fucking cardboard, because I don't think that adds a whole lot of merit to making a video. So what you get in the box is this sheet over here. This basically says how you can get up to 60 miles an hour using that different pinion that you get over here. So you install this, you get up to 60 miles an hour, or like 95 plus kilometers an hour. And then basically if you want to run it on the track, have like really low end action, good torque and all that stuff, you keep it in this red zone, which is the stock pinion. Whatever you want, you can just go ahead and do that. So handy if you're really into like graphs and like showing your friends like, oh look, you know, I can do this with my new car. Then that's definitely a sheet to to keep. You get a bunch of shock pistons. Now some of these have 8 holes, and there's also a few complete blanks in there. The 8-hole ones, those are actually 2 different sizes from what I can see, and the blank ones are basically for you to determine your own shock rate. So if you want to I don't know, play around with shock tuning a tiny bit yourself, you can go ahead and do that. There's 4 blanks included. I'm not sure what's actually installed in the car itself, but I guess we will figure that out by perhaps diving into the manual a tiny bit later on. Cool that that's included. Gives you a lot of setup options. You get these XT90 connectors. I for one will not be using these. I know that a lot of people are really happy with these. They handle big amp draws and lots of current and stuff, and make sure that your stuff doesn't catch fire or starts to auto weld itself to the point where you need a fire extinguisher at some point. So these are great connectors. I, however, use 6.5mm castle connectors on all of my batteries. So I'm also going to install some on this Arrma Typhon. You get some tools, so in case you want to do some maintenance or you need to reach something and you're completely new to the hobby, this bag of tools comes in really handy. I don't think that this is like a beginner's car, so I bet that if you get one of these, you actually have a bag of tools already. You can of course run this thing on a 4S, make it slightly less dangerous, but on 6S it is truly a bullet. So you get a couple of Allen keys, some cross wrenches, wheel wrench, basically everything to get started. This is handy to carry with you if you're out on the track. You get a manual. This manual basically encompasses absolutely everything. So the Typhon, the Talion, the Kraton, the Centon, the 6S Centon, and the Outcast Centon. There's also the 4x4 brushed version, which you have seen me unbox more recently. I think it's handy to have a manual that actually sort of like has everything in there, in case you do sort of broaden your collection and add more cars to it. You don't have to hold on to like, I don't know, 700 pages of manuals to get through all those cars. This one basically does it all. I think that's actually pretty handy. You get this tactic radio. I think you know this radio by now. It's almost like I'm showing it weekly. This is the TTX 300. This is a 3-channel radio, so you can actually program these little buttons to do something. So if you're weird and you want to put a winch on it, or you want to put a light bar on the thing, you can go ahead and do that. It's handy that that feature is included. I love these radios. They're really holding up to a ton of abuse. You can beat the shit out of somebody with this radio and it will not break. There's nothing on it that can actually break. There's no big antennas sticking out, poking people in the eye. There's no big screams on it. All there is basically this LED to indicate that it's on. Once you install 4 AA batteries, you get these trim switches on the front. Well, in case you don't know what those do, it's basically to set like center for your steering, for your throttle, jubal rate, so you don't go like over crank your steering and potentially damage your stuff. In the back you have your reverse switches, so maybe you want to challenge yourself, steer left on your radio and actually make the car steer right. I can tell you that at 60 miles an hour that's a lot of fun. Trigger position is really good. On-off switch is also over here. As a foam wheel, you can also use it to one-hand drive. And overall, I have nothing to complain about with these type of radios. Axial also includes these with a ton of the SCX10 version 2 cars. They recently, with the Honcho, they switched to the TTX 200, which is like a smaller version radio that you can't actually put down like this. This is by far, I think, my favorite ready-to-run radio. So cool to see that one included. Now, onto the car. Finally, you can already hear that metal gears are really loud. This will, over time, this will kind of mellow down sound-wise. But initially, if you hear this, this is nothing to worry about. This just means that there's like a steel pinion, steel spur, just to ensure that it's like beefy enough to withstand any abuse. I think first thing you notice is that it's really low profile, really slick. Massive spoiler in 3 different levels, just to add some aerodynamics to make sure that that ass actually stays planted. I think it looks really cool, very aggressive. Same with the body, very aggressively aligned body. And well, as always, I think Arrma is actually one of the most detailed companies out there when it comes to paint schemes. Over here it's no different. So you see kind of like a gunmetal camo thing going on over the roof. Then there is some silver with like a design that you also see return on the can. I will see if I can let that make sense by adding some close-ups. Window stickers look really cool. You get all these openings in the back to dissipate some heat. Overall, I just think that it looks really dope, to put it like that. You get 2 carbon fiber stickers on the sides. And I just think that it looks really fast, it looks really sleek, very aerodynamic. I love the color scheme on it. I will of course be painting up a different body for it. So I have one of these stock shells, completely clear. If you have any ideas or suggestions on what to do paint-wise, please let me know, because I'm always open to suggestions. The body clips, they're held on by these tiny tethers, and that's basically what they always do. It's really handy to make sure that when you're out running your car or your truck, that you don't lose those body clips, that they actually stay put. Another thing that they did, if you look on the inside, there's some protective tape. That of course is also very handy to make sure that you get a tiny bit more durability out of one of these Lexan bodies. This is of course pretty thin, and you can imagine that with this being wrapped around those rock catchers in the front, these trays, that it does get a lot of abuse. So if you're kicking up dirt or rocks or whatnot against the front of that shell, that really risks getting like a lot of damage. In this way it will just last a tiny bit longer. It's basically in all the places where it really counts, so also here on the sides, around the body posts. Yeah, just cool. You can tell on the inside it says don't just bash, blast. Well, I'm thinking on a 6S that's definitely going to be a good option with this Typhon. Again, these loud gears. Well, let's have a look on the inside. I'm thinking we're going to start off with all of the electronics. The receiver comes in this waterproof receiver box. Big Arrma logo on it, just so you know where it's actually located. This is a 15 kilogram waterproof steering servo. If you're just going to bash this thing or do speed runs or whatnot, this is going to be more than enough. I can imagine, however, with some really intensive track use, that you may want to upgrade it at some point. But for ready to run, this is a really decent servo. Leads up to a big steering rack, big servo saver. over here in the front, stamped aluminum Ackerman, and then some steering rods that you can actually tune in length to get some more toe in or toe out, depending on what your style of driving is. Big ESC. Now this is a BLX 185. I see a lot of people sort of mistaking this for a 185 amp ESC. That's actually not the case. This one is rated at 150 amps. Same with the BLX 200. It's basically just a type number, so you know sort of which ESC is being referred to, but don't go and confuse that with some actual specs. Big motor, 8-scale motor, 2050 kV. More than enough for a car of this size. Again, this is a very light car, so you are going to get some crazy speeds and some crazy action with a motor of this size. There's a really thick aluminum motor mount that also mounts up to the center diff, so it also doubles as a center diff carrier. The other side of that center diff is actually carried by a plastic carrier. Well, that all has to do with like heat dissipation, keeping the weight down. Really think it's a nice setup, looks easily accessible, nothing to complain over there. Massive battery tray. Well, here are these XT90 connectors. I'll be changing them out. If you want to run two batteries, so 2x2S or 2x3S, you simply unplug this loop over here, and you can just go ahead and plug it in. If you run like a single pack, so one big 4S battery or a big 6S battery, then this is the way to go. Battery tray is massive, it has like a telescopic bit in it that might look familiar from the Outcast, and then this Velcro strap goes over it, make sure that that battery isn't going to go anywhere. This tiny tab over here, there's like a tiny opening that's actually to secure your what do you call it, your balancer plug. So in case you drop a battery in there, you don't want that balancing plug to flop around. You just tuck it in there, secure it with that rubber strap, and you're good to go. The entire drivetrain on this thing is made from 5mm steel, so you have dog bones in the center and also in the back, and then in the front where it really counts, because you want to have some crazy steering throw, but you also don't want to throw a dog bone every now and again if you have like a heavy impact or whatnot. So what I did over there is actually install some CVDs, basically where it really counts. So that's good. Pivot ball suspension in the front, so the A-arms basically end up in a pivot then at your steering hubs. So that's really cool. Some aluminum over there as well, some aluminum detailing. So that's where you see that stamped red anodized aluminum return. Also here on the top, just to keep everything in check, keep everything together, the steering rack and the bulkhead. Also stamped aluminum bit with an Arrma logo in it. I think it looks really cool. Adds a lot of detail to the car. You can tell that these upper A-arms, not sure if you'll be able to see it like this, but otherwise I will make sure to include the close-ups. These are pretty pronounced, and I think that is just to give you a maximum amount of clearance, but also still a maximum amount of suspension travel on full steering throw. Really good. These plastics, they're quite flexible, so you can run it in cold weather. It's not going to completely snap off or break off. Some manufacturers actually use plastic that's a tiny bit brittle and that doesn't have any give to it. Arrma does, I think, a good job in selecting a quality of plastic that actually keeps up. The front bulkhead, from what I've read, this is actually a different version than in the previous ones. So there's some webbing included in the back over there, just to ensure that you're not going to snap that off. So it's kind of like ripped for your pleasure, to put it like that. Well, that's cool, of course, adding a tiny bit of durability. There is a sway bar installed in the front. Sometimes you get like extra sway bars with cars. I think in this case they actually set it up pretty nice. There's no extras included. Same with the back, that's also set up pretty well, and this basically just ensures that if you have a crazy amount of suspension travel on one side, that the other side sort of comes along with counteract it and keep your car planted. In case you're not familiar with what a sway bar does. Shock tower, also stamped aluminum. That also goes for the back. 5mm looks more than thick enough. I don't see a reason for them to use machined aluminum or anything like that over there. Overall, I think the quality of it looks really nice, and especially seeing that it's tucked in such a compact shape and such a cool looking car. I think they really did a great job of making something that's appealing and different. Chassis braces, they're both plastic, but if I feel it, then I don't think that that should have been aluminum or whatnot. So this is a car, if you are going to take it up some sick jumps and punish the crap out of it, this will really hold up to all of the abuse. The uppers in the back, the upper turnbuckles, those are tunable, so you can set your camber a tiny bit if you want to tuck it in, lean it out. You can go ahead and do that. Everything looks really well engineered, and I must say that out of the box it looks well set up. The shocks, I believe that, well, again, you know, I don't have anything to compare it to because I don't have any of the earlier versions, but I do believe that these shocks, that they're different than the previous 2 generations. And this is like a big bore shock, has a 4mm shaft, they're booted. That's really cool. The shock caps, they're bleeder caps, so in case you do some shock maintenance or you want to change out the shock oil, you can just screw out that the bleeder screw and make sure that you don't have any air left in your shocks. They're fully adjustable, so there's machined aluminum shock bodies, and then you have some plastic tuning rings. Spring rate seems pretty okay to me, and I think that adding that shock boot as well around the shaft is going to keep a lot of crap out and ensure that you can actually enjoy this car for a bit longer than you would if it would be like a completely open construction. The shock caps are also protected by this tiny roof thingy, so there's like a tiny protector in case you get dumb and you flip this thing on its roof, slide it over, I don't know, a road and have like a truck run over it, then at least the shock caps are going to still be intact. The chassis, I believe this is 3mm, this is all aluminum, all the hardware is countersunk. Looks really cool. Also these plastic guards on the sides, they really tuck into it nicely. So this is all really well integrated, and I think that overall the build quality and finish quality of it is just out of this world. These wheels, if you ask me what they look like, I would say that they look a tiny bit like a Lambo rim. So very sporty, very aggressive. Well, like a pin style tire, like something that you would find on a regular 8-scale race buggy. So also for some track use, if you just want to basically go out, slap a battery in it, slap some batteries in that radio, and just see what your lap times are going to be. These tires are going to be fine. If you do want to do speed runs, for example, I see a lot of people actually getting GRP tires. That's also what I will be looking into. They don't balloon as much. They hold up to a high speeds really well. They don't wear down all that quick, and especially on this car they actually look really good as well. Let's see, well, I think that sort of covers it. So one of the next videos, I'm not sure if it's going to be the next video, I will be painting this thing up. I hope you can let me know if you have some really cool ideas for a paint scheme, what they are. I'm thinking that I want to stick with basically the older type of Typhon paint scheme a tiny bit. So I want to put some red in there. Not sure, perhaps you have a better idea. If you do, leave it in the comments box. I always read the comments. If you want to have more info about the Arrma Typhon 6S BLX, go check out the link in the description box. There's a link to Arrma's website over there where you can read up more. In case I forgot something, if you have one of these and perhaps you have some really great tips for me, especially knowing that I want to use this thing for speed runs. So I'm going to like drop it down like that and just see how fast it can go. Let me know as well. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button. If you have not subscribed yet, please do, because it's free. No Patreon, no GoFundMe, no PayPal, no bullshit like that on this channel. Not now, not ever. And well, thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you in the next one. Take care, bye-bye.
Back on.